waging information warfare against pushers of fake news. It's David Knight.
Welcome back. We've had a bill introduced in Congress. It's called the Unmasking Antifa Act. It's been introduced. It would give a 15-year sentence for people who wear masks and violently attack others. It would give 2 years of jail time for destroying buildings or property while wearing a mask or disguise. Let me tell you something. When we talk about terrorists, these people are the real terrorists. They want to call the people who were there at the Bundy standoff or the people who were there in Oregon, they want to call them terrorists. Nobody was wearing a mask. Nobody had anything to hide. As a matter of fact, at the Bundy standoff, they were waving American flags. They were peacefully redressing their grievances with the government, which is what is protected under the First Amendment. But as we got there, they had marked off an area out in the middle of the desert, because it's mostly desert out there where the federal government claims it owns the land. They had marked off an area and said, First Amendment area. Right there, you can see that, First Amendment area. And somebody hung a handwritten sign there that said the First Amendment is not an area. It is not to be confined. It is not to be shut down by masked thugs. That's why I call the Antifa. It's not anti-fascism. There you go. There you can see what they put there. It's not anti-fascism. These people are anti-FA. They're anti-First Amendment. Let's understand what they're about. They don't want anybody speaking out. And they are violent. Violent. They said that as people were talking about this, you had the left coming back and saying, here's Emily Gorsinski on Twitter saying the Unmasking Antifa Act is very concerning. It reflects a willful misunderstanding of what Antifa, anti-First Amendment, is. But I have also been saying it is a risk of fascism. And it's not just in the streets. It's now in the Congress because they're going to prosecute people for wearing masks and getting violent. Imagine that. And Will Chamberlain replied and said, on the contrary, if history is any guide, nipping political violence in the bud should be among Congress's highest priorities. And so you got Madeleine Albright is making a book tour. She's written a book called Fascism. And of course, she is an expert on fascism. Let me tell you, she's not an observer, but a practitioner of fascism or authoritarianism, if you wish. She doesn't appeal to groupthink policies for her power structure. But fascism is not an important distinction. Authoritarianism is. And she exhibits that. You know, this is the woman who, when she was questioned, I believe it was Leslie Stahl, said, your sanctions killed over 500,000 Iraqi children. All these people, oh, it's the children. We got to do something for the children. Do they cry any tears for the 500,000 children that Madeleine Albright starved? Because she didn't have the common decency to even lie about that. She could have denied it. She could have said, no, we didn't kill 500,000 kids. No, she said it was worth it. Now, this same woman is doing her book tour, telling us about fascism, of course, saying that the U.S. needs to have open borders so it can demand the same thing from Europe. She's going to destroy your kids. That's really what she's about. She's going to burn down your country. She was asked on the BBC whether the fascism of her book title describes President Trump. She says, well, I do think he's the most undemocratic president in modern American history, and that troubles me. But then the interviewer pointed out, and he said, well, there's another way of looking at this, which is that you have an idiosyncratic, outspoken, but very popular president, a well-tried, long-tested democratic system, which is robust, and an opposition which simply doesn't get it. I'm surprised that somebody in the BBC would say that. But this guy, his name is Marr, actually did. Good for him, Andrew Marr. She said, well, fascism, of course, is hard to define, and I don't think that Trump is a fascist leader, but I do think that his attitude toward freedom of speech, stop right there. The anti-fascists, they say. But there's nothing that they hate more than free speech. And I'll get to it later in the show, but there's actually a video of a Latina Antifa coming after a white guy. Now he's there. He wants to be one of the anti-fascists, but he can't be because he's white. He can't get no respect. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight. Welcome back. Coming up in the next segment, we will be talking to Eugene Wzorek, and another man who was severely burned for standing up to political corruption and injustice in the court system in Chicago. And you will not believe this story. They have just filed to the Supreme Court. They're going to tell us about their particular case and how this applies throughout the country. So stay with us coming up. And I want to talk about what's going on with NATO. President Trump is there right now. There's already been a lot of back and forth going on there. And it is a very important message because we need to understand that the military-industrial complex empire, and that includes especially NATO, has no clothes. That empire has no clothes. And we're going to break that down in the next hour before Lionel joins us. But I want to talk about, in this, since we've just got one segment here, I want to talk about Trump in the UK. And he's going there right after he finishes with NATO. And as he was getting ready to go there, we know that there's been a lot of problems beginning last Friday with the overt betrayal. As Theresa May was saying she was going to implement Brexit. People doubted that from the beginning. She was one of the few ministers in the Conservative Party that did not support Brexit. And everybody believed that she was playing a delay game, and then the delay game stopped, and then it came into outright opposition. So she had a lot of resignations. It looks like she has now survived a vote of no confidence, and she's still, however, weakened. But as President Trump is heading there, Breitbart points out, actually Delingpole said, President Trump has poured petrol, gasoline in our terms, onto the flames of UK Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit crisis by coming out for her chief opponent, Boris Johnson, who just resigned yesterday, I think. Boris Johnson's a friend of mine, says President Trump. He's been very, very nice to me, very supportive, and I may speak to him when I get over there. I like Boris Johnson. I've always liked him. He just resigned in protest. Said, you have waved the white flag here over Brexit. You were trying to turn us into an EU colony, and he resigned as foreign minister from Theresa May cabinet there. So President Trump has kind words for him, and as Delingpole says, this is what diplomats would call a gaffe. May, after all, is the leader of the nation to which Trump will shortly be making the first official visit. Johnson, meanwhile, is May's new public enemy number one. Sure, Trump found some time for kind words for Theresa May as well. He said, yeah, I get along with her very well. I have a good relationship. But he said that's just polite formula. It's the Johnson comments that will be noticed, and of course, Trump intended them to be. He says, this is precisely the kind of behavior that makes Trump one of the most winning presidents ever. Trump simply doesn't care about the narrow issue of whether or not he ruffles the feathers of a cold and distant prime minister who clearly finds him mildly distasteful. I would say at least mildly distasteful. She doesn't like President Trump. What he does care about, says Delingpole, very, very much, is winning the bigger battle on behalf of the people against the globalist elite. And that includes the people of the UK. At the weekend, he said Britain was effectively hijacked by the Remainer coup. And that's not good news if you're one of the 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit, and it won. Trump does not want that coup against Brexit to be successful for a number of obvious reasons. From his friendship with ex-UKIP leader Nigel Farage, whom May has priggishly banned from seeing President Trump on his visit. Can you believe that? What is Theresa May going to do to Nigel Farage if he talks to President Trump? Is she going to lock him up like Tommy Robinson because he exercised speech? This is the kind of tyranny that we see in the UK right now. And his instinctive loathing of Trump's instinctive loathing of the EU project, along with his sense that the Brexit vote in the UK was a precursor to his own victory in the presidential election. He says if Trump had sat down with his expert advisors, they would have produced all kinds of reasons why a U.S. president on the eve of a state visit should never have come out in support of a controversial figure like Boris Johnson. But that's not how Trump rolls. He shoots from the hip. Boris is a maverick who has just staked his all on something that Trump happens to believe in very strongly. And whether it is the right move politically and strategically, only time will tell. But it was definitely the right move morally. And let me play for you this man, Nigel Farage, who was the motivating factor behind Brexit, who has been banned by Theresa May from speaking to President Trump. Maybe President Trump will talk to him and Boris Johnson. That would be great. Here's what Nigel Farage said about a month ago about two different Europes and how he would have managed Brexit.
I mean, obviously, you concentrated an enormous amount on the campaign. But did you think at all in the years and months, you know, leading up to the actual vote about the detail of how we get
Oh, I thought about a strategy for how we should pursue Brexit, of course.
So what have they done wrong?
And I wrote about... Well, look, there are two Europes. One is the Europe of Brussels, the one of, the unelected old men, the Barniers, the Junckers. That's one Europe. The other Europe are the member states. And what we should have done from day one is we should have had delegations going out to all of the European countries. We should have been in Munich, visiting BMW factories. We should have been in Champagne, visiting all the sparkling winemakers. We should have been out there pushing our message that Brexit is not about us pulling up the drawbridge. It's not about us not wishing to be friends. It's not about us not wanting to trade. And getting them to put more pressure on their MEPs, on their prime ministers, on their presidents, and directly onto the European Commission. We should have stolen the initiative on this. We should have made the argument that actually continuing with a free trade deal was very much in the interests of Europe. We did none of that.
And so you can imagine why Theresa May hates him, because he's right, and the public is with him. As a matter of fact, even as he says, I'm banned from meeting Trump because the UK government hates me. But they don't hate Brexit. Those wanting the exit, wanting the EU exit, Brexit, rises by 15% after Brexit. So its popularity has increased. As a matter of fact, all the Brexit doomsayers were saying it's going to cause a collapse of the economy. Here's an article from Zero Hedge. Since the Brexit vote, the UK has created 450,000 jobs. Unemployment stands at 4%, the lowest since 1975. Labor participation rate is 75% compared to the EU unemployment rate of 8.7%. So they got a 4% unemployment rate over the EU. It's 8.7. They have 75% labor participation versus the EU's labor participation of 58%. Productivity is the fastest rate in 6 years. UK factory orders are at a 4-year high. Wage growth has accelerated to a 2-year high. All this was they were supposed to just immediately collapse into recession. Remember when all the big banks were saying that? Oh, you can't have Brexit. It's going to destroy the country. So Nigel Farage says, you better pass it, or I'm going to run for UKIP leader again, and we're going to target the conservative MPs who said they were for Brexit and then took it out. But it doesn't look like they're going to take out Theresa May. She has escaped the vote of no confidence. But I want to play for you a little bit the time that we have left here, a back and forth between Piers Morgan and Sadiq Khan, because as we look at the London knife attacks becoming more and more violent, Sadiq Khan is not concerned about that. Just keep the knives away from his Trump baby balloon. That's all he's interested in, because, we don't want to puncture that thing. But Piers Morgan has a go at Sadiq Khan. I want you to hear a little bit of this back and forth.
World leader. There is a limitation on the US Constitution of free speech because it offends Theresa May.
I'm saying, I think you're being...
You know better than that.
No, I think, what I'm saying is, I think...
You're a journalist, for goodness sake. I can't believe you used to be an editor. Can you imagine?
I think there's hypocrisy here, because I don't think you would allow in a million years a topless blimp of Hillary Clinton in a nappy, had she won, to be flown at Parliament. I don't think you'd allow a black balloon depicting Obama as a baby in a nappy to be flown. So I charge you with hypocrisy about free speech.
Please give me time to respond to your 4-minute question. Yeah. So this weekend, there are two big protests taking place in our city. On Saturday, there's an extreme far-right, Free Tommy Robinson protest. You know my views on that. Yeah. They're the same as yours, by the way.
Yeah.
Isn't that tolerant of him to allow people to speak out Free Tommy Robinson while they keep him in jail?
There's an anti-Donald Trump protest.
All right, let's hold it right there. We're out of time. You want to talk about hypocrisy? Talk about the fact that Sadiq Khan pushed for Farah Khan to come into the UK, but he has pushed very hard to keep Trump out. That's what's behind this Trump baby thing. And the really sad thing is that the fight against the grooming gangs, which Tommy Robinson was speaking out against, is only supported by 3% of the lawmakers in the UK. Only 3%. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to a couple of individuals who have been pursuing injustice in the courts. That's what we're talking about the entire last hour. We just saw a pardon by President Trump of the Hammonds. We talked about the legal issues there. The fires set by the government, the accusations of being arsonists and terrorists by the government, which was really a political persecution. But we have a story of corruption coming out of Chicago. This is a search for justice by a wrongfully terminated man in Chicago. His name is Eugene Wzorek. He is on the phone with us right now. and he's been trying to get justice for several decades. I want to play a real quick little clip to give you a quick summary of what has been happening with this. Let's run that video.
Big secret the court system doesn't want you to know that could affect every court case in the United States of America. Better yet, let me just show you.
Eugene Wzorek was fired from his job as a truck driver for the city sewer department in 1984. Wzorek charged that a $1,000 contribution to then mayoral candidate Richard M. Daley in 1983 led to his firing by the Harold Washington administration. Arguing that his firing was political, Wzorek sued the city in federal court, citing the Shachtman decree.
First coming out with this in 2004 with the tell-all book by the late Linda Ackor, Death of the Justice System, Eugene discovered from his own experience in his own case that the courts were hiding everyone's tapes. Furthering the evidence was the media's own admission. They were in collusion with the courts, engaging in a scheme to not just hide the fact that court audio is part of everyone's due process right. They were altering everyone's transcripts, dockets, minute orders, and cases. The evidence Eugene can provide is they all colluded to hide his win over the Shachtman decree, proving Chicago fired him for political reasons.
That citizens and their attorneys have is the courts don't want to believe that government officials are in fact altering documents, that government officials are in fact backdating documents, that government officials are in fact lying on the witness stand. And so what happens is the citizen goes in, like Gene did, behind the 8 ball, with the odds tipped against them. The only way to change that is through public awareness.
Then they change your records to cover their lies in court. What is said in court never completely gets to the record, and the only true record of the court to prove what was said is also taken away. With this precedent-setting case, we are hoping to show this country, its citizens, our president and his family, and cabinet, just how they are cheating all of us.
All right, this is an amazing story because, as you just heard there, he sued them under a Supreme Court case. We're going to get into that. After he won, they changed the transcripts. They withheld the tapes as they altered that information there, and he's been fighting this for several decades. But we've had a new development, and just this week, we had them go all the way to the Supreme Court and file with the Supreme Court. Hopefully, it will be heard by the Supreme Court because this is a massive bit of fraud here. And just as we saw with New Jersey Weed Man, they've had to do a lot of this work on their own. And the New Jersey Weed Man said, hey, I'm going to represent myself because I can't get a lawyer to talk about jury nullification. They're afraid of the system. Well, the lawyers are afraid of this corrupt system that will go so far as to hide and to alter transcripts, and they've got evidence that that happened. Now, as part of this team, Eugene has joining with him. This is Eugene Wzorek that we're going to be talking to in just a moment. Also, Bill Fabricius, I believe is the way you pronounce your name, Bill. Bill is joining us. Bill was severely burned just over a month ago. His home was set fire between 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning. And so we want to ask him, first of all, how are you doing, Bill? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about what happened with this fire at your house and exactly what happened and why you think this was set.
Well, I was in bed about quarter after 5. I woke up and the hallway was completely engulfed in flames. There was a gallon of gasoline or some gasoline cans turned upside down in one of the water coolers I had that provided accelerant to burn. When I got up and ran down the hall, I looked to the left, which is to the back door. It was totally engulfed, and I slipped and fell, got burned, and ran out the front door and watched my house burn from that point.
And you're currently in the hospital, is that correct, or in the VA?
Yes, I am. I'm under hospital care.
And you suffered second-degree burns, some third-degree burns, is that correct?
I suffered second-degree burns over about 20% of my body, mostly in my arms and both arms, back of the neck, head, and my back and lower portion of the back.
Now, I see from your information here that the news reported that it was a grass fire.
That's what they reported, yes.
Wow. Has there been an arson investigation by the police, or do you trust the police to conduct an honest investigation at this point?
Well, there is a arson investigation, whether or not there's been no outcome on that. They have not interviewed me as to the occurrences of it. I did take some notes and copy down notes within a day of the occurrence when I was in the hospital.
Okay, and how were you helping Eugene here? You were helping him put together documents, or as volunteer?
Well, yes, Eugene and I got connected back in 2013 when I was running another case, and Gene presented to me, because I could not understand why I wasn't prevailing in the court case. There were just things that just didn't add up. And then Gene asked the pivotal question, did it ever occur to me that they were cheating me? And I just sat there for, had to be 10, 15, 20 seconds, and I said, that would explain why I would not and have not gotten any remedy or justice in the case, because I try this and I would be blocked. I try this, I would be blocked. The documents were being removed from my file. Things were being altered. At that point in time, I was not aware of the audio tapes. And then I started asking, well, where's the audio tapes? And I kept on getting denied as, oh, they don't exist. We don't know what they are. And in pursuing that, I got involved with republishing Linda Akers' book, and republished it under the same title with the volume 2.
All right, and so that gets us to Eugene, and Eugene is joining us also on the phone, and you can find Eugene on Facebook.com/Eugene, that's EUGENE, Wzorek, and you spell that WZOREK. Eugene, you've been fighting this battle for a very long time. Back in 1973, you were hired as a truck driver for the city of Chicago Sewer Department, and we're going to talk to you when you come back and get you to tell us not only about the Shachtman decree, but I think the most important thing, which Bill was just talking about, which is the way the records have been falsified and withheld, not only in your case, but in Bill's case and in many other cases. We're going to be right back talking to Eugene Wzorek. Again, you can find him on Facebook.com/Eugene Wzorek, WZOREK. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Eugene Wzorek, as well as Bill Fabricius. Bill was just talking to us from the hospital. He suffered second-degree burns as his house burned down in the middle of the night. He found upside-down gas cans and so forth. What were they doing that caused this to happen? Well, Eugene has been fighting for decades against the Chicago political machine. And I want to go to Eugene right now and have him tell his story. Thank you for joining us, Eugene.
Yeah, glad to have you. But I'll just say something before I go on. And if it isn't for President Trump, this wouldn't happen, because the rest of them are all in the same gang. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. It's right. It works for the people. Now, just because I'm a truck driver doesn't mean it wasn't work in your case. It's the idea that I know how to get through and use the system to go in there and get this. I've been in 5 cases with them, in the same cases. They've been trying to stop me and stop me and stop me. But the point is, when I go to the Supreme Court, they can't be there because of Rule 11E. Because if you take anything out of the files and it's not there, you're not allowed to make another motion. People don't know that. So when I do get to the Supreme Court, and they're supposed to hear this, and the reason that we're not there yet is, first it's filing 10 briefs, then 20 briefs, now they made it up to 40. So we're going to see how this works, but we'll get there. But they cannot be in the court against me. It's me and the Supreme Court. They're not allowed under Rule 11E to go there. They have changed that since I brought this on and made the E disappear and put it into D. So basically, it's me and the Supreme Court and none of them.
Wow, that's interesting. We're going to get to the Supreme Court thing. Let's talk first a little bit about how you got here, because, of course, everybody knows about Chicago's machine, political machine, and the politics there are famous. And it was so famous, so infamous, that back in 1969 they had a man named Michael Shackman, right, who sued the city of Chicago for patronage. Tell us what patronage is, Eugene.
Well, patronage is a form of feudalism, and you pay 10% of your salary and you work at their bequest, but you're not supposed to, because by me winning the First Amendment and them not wanting me put me in there, patronage is extortion, which is a crime. And your FBI has been doing this for years, so don't think it's just with Trump. Same thing with the U.S. Attorney, and we can prove this in the court system. We've got everything you need to know that they did it, because here's what I did. There's extensive and intrinsic fraud. One is fraud against you and the other guy, and the judge sitting up there is a referee, and he decides what he wants. He calls balls and strikes. But when they fraud him, the lawyer or anybody frauds him, then it becomes a different case. Then that goes into a different fraud, and he's got to bring that out, and that's what we did. So what we actually did is use their stuff against them. And all the evidence that I have that was in the book, and I don't even know if the book is, Bill knows more about the book than I do because I don't pay attention to it. I was just giving them the story. And basically what they do is, in there is 40 pages of them saying what they've done. Like they've changed the docket, they've changed this, they've changed that. We've got that from a woman called Teresa Ann Ventozzi, who's actually gave that to my guys, and they were scared about it because I had a young lawyer after, the older lawyer died. So I was able to control him and run the case myself until they told him in a coffee shop across from John Marshall Law School that we don't do things here that way. We don't do it. See? So there's a different way we do it. You got a good heart, but we don't work it that way. So then he had to go on their side. Then he was scared crapless after that. So then I had to carry on eventually myself and do the case after getting the stuff. But I knew what they would be saying, what they would be doing. They would have to be lying, so I'd catch them at everything. As a matter of fact, the transcript that I got, I was supposed to get another lawyer because they didn't want me going alone for the damages. These lawyers from the city of Chicago gave me the actual first rough draft of the copy they were forging. On day 2, it can show you, just like into Hollywood, it shows you that they were putting stickums, extra numbers on there, so that they could know where they left off from forging. And they thought I was going to bring it back to them, but they brought it late at night. But I went to an all-night gas station.
I want to get to that. Eugene. But let's lay the foundation here for the audience so that they understand. You fought back against this patronage system. As you pointed out, you had to pay money to them and so forth. And this is something really that the Supreme Court should be interested in, because they just had a ruling saying that you can't be forced to contribute to a union if you don't agree with their political positions. It's very similar to this particular case. But then there are other things, and that is the key issue here, the way that they altered the transcripts, the way they withheld tapes. That is very important as well. But let's talk first about this patronage thing. The Shackman Decree, which came from the Supreme Court, was put against the city of Chicago, and that was based on a 1969 case. You started in 1973 as a truck driver for the city of Chicago. What year did they fire you because you gave money to the wrong person? You gave money to Richard Daley. They didn't like that, and so they fired you and made it clear that they were firing you for that, right? What year was that?
It was in 1984, and guy Summerford said it in front of a friend of mine who'd witnessed this in court and told him. So we really actually beat the Jesus out of them, because actually in the court and changing the transcript, stuff got really hot, because he said to the lawyer, Charles X, he said, "Did you know they're framing him?" And he said, "Yes, Your Honor, I did," which should have ended the case right there. They changed that to the truck was broke before I got there. But unfortunately, I was never in work that day. I had a conjunctivitis for 2 days and wasn't in work. So anything they had against me, they couldn't use, because I had notes for when they said I did these things. See, what they do is they try to frame you, but you let them frame you, but you just tell them, "No, hey, I didn't do it. Do what you want to do." And then you got doctor's notes, so when they do take you to court, they're screwed. See, that's the way it goes. So
they said there in the court transcripts, the original court transcripts and the testimony said they frame him. So, and then they said something about the truck being fixed, but you weren't even at work that day.
No, I wasn't at work the next day either. But that wasn't even where I worked. So the point was is that they were just screwed up, because they have to keep the audio tape. There's a master audio tape. Let me let you know that first. It's in a vault. They have to keep that for the court so they can tell how they framed you and how they cheated you. That's not just for you, but you can use it. Because, see, there's a difference in the audio tape. See, this is what the people don't understand. Your lawyer's going to tell you there is none, we ain't got none, there is none, there ain't none. If you go to the court, Supreme Court, and you ask for it, they'll say, well, we can't answer that because you can go buy the tape out there. You're in a catch-22. But what I did was about the judges say, I can't give you the audio tape. See, there's a difference between doing that. So basically he broke the law by saying, I can't give you the tape because everybody will want their tapes, and they'll be playing them on TV every day. And what your people got to understand here is this is in every game of life. This is the children's cases, those cases, and them cases. Because I met a woman, what I heard in December of 2005, and I met her and got to be friends with her, and she was talking to a court worker that was working there, and he says, well, the guy's father called the judge and told him to fix it. So I've been working with her ever since, and she's been a very good person, and I know she's been cheated in that, and she's trying to get her kids back, and we'll do that. We'll eventually get that because we can show if they don't give you the tape, they're not giving you the record. So if you never...
And this is what is important for everybody to understand, that there's an audio tape here, that they're not allowed to withhold this information. This is a key thing as a part of your case, which is going to apply to everybody. And one of the things that you found, Eugene, was in the original, first you found that they had altered the physical printed transcripts. They sent stuff to you, and some of the stuff was redacted, is that correct? And you had a friend who helped you, that was like physical redactions, and he was able to remove the ink so you could see what they had redacted?
Right,
is that correct?
It shows in there that your tape automatically got to be in your file. See, if you read mine, not the ones they put out there now, because after I caught them, they start changing everything again. See, and they didn't want me in there. And see, they want me in an appellate court because you can't get through the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office to get up to there, because now that we got Trump, we got a shot at it. Without Trump, you have no shot. That's why I don't realize why anybody's against Donald Trump, because with Trump is the only way you're going to get your case done.
That's right. That's right. All right, we got to take a break. We're going to be right back with another segment, Eugene Wzorek, and also with Bill Fabricius. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is going to apply to you as well. You need to know what your legal rights are. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Get away with this. This is fraud.
60-year-old Eugene Wzorek has been battling the city of Chicago for 21 years, and now his case is heating up. It started in 1984 when Wzorek, then a truck driver for the sewer department, made a $1,000 contribution to Richard M. Daley's campaign to unseat Mayor Harold Washington.
They fired me for it. They even told me they were going to do it, and there's nothing I can do about it.
So Wzorek sued the city under the Shackman Decree, which prohibits political hiring and firing, and won. But when he went back to court to seek damages from the city for emotional distress,
I start realizing there's a lot of things going wrong here. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the transcripts. Documents are missing. People are taking stuff and out. They're changing the records of the case.
For instance, 6 pages of this key court transcript allegedly disappeared, replaced by transcripts from an earlier hearing. Instead of the federal judge asking the city's lawyer, did you know they were framing him, the new transcript reads, did you know the truck was broken before he got it? Wzorek says it appears the court reporter's signature had been forged, the top signature being legit, the bottom from the transcript in question. And when Wzorek and his attorney requested a copy of the tape of that hearing, they were told the tape had been signed out by one of the city's lawyers and never returned.
To me, when I see that in combination with the active manipulation of the transcripts to remove Judge Duff's findings on those issues, it makes me very suspicious about what the city was doing throughout the course of this case.
All right, so you just heard that report, and this has been something that has been pursued by Eugene Wzorek for quite some time. We're talking to him and to Bill Fabricius, who has been helping him and who is severely burned. Bill is calling us from a hospital. This is, if anybody doesn't know, Chicago is very crooked, as you just heard, but it is not limited to Chicago. We're going to talk about that. Before we do, though, let's stay focused on your particular case here, Eugene, for a little bit longer. Let's talk about the fact, how did you find, at one point you found copies of the original as well as the altered documents. Tell us about that story before we get into the audio tapes, and we'll talk about the whole story about the audio tapes, because that's key for everybody to understand.
Well, they had to give me, they didn't want me being my own lawyer anymore. You know, they wanted to have a lawyer because the lawyer is only going to go so far. And that's the truth. And anybody can argue with me about that, and I don't care, because I'll win the fight. One thing I wanted to tell you real fast, they have to take this in the Supreme Court or break the law, because the other side can't come. They can't come because they stole the tape out. And that guy was a U.S. attorney, too. Only a U.S. attorney can go in there and take that tape. There's a lot of things that people don't know. So don't think of my case as a truck driver. Think of it as your case and what happened to you, and you're going to find things out. But basically, they must hear this case because there is no other side. That was supposed to be done in negotiations, but they tried. They made a mistake. They screwed up, and that was it. The transcript they gave me was to look it over before I get a new lawyer the next day. But they actually gave me the rough draft that was changed with dots, dashes. It's so crazy that it's unbelievable. Nobody in their right mind could read a transcript like that. So when I got it done at night at the car exchange, the car wash, and put it in, I went the next morning and filed it. So they couldn't do anything about that. They had to leave it there. So that transcript is official, maybe changed a little bit more, but I've got the real
So you
one.
filed it with the court. Is that what you're saying?
Right,
You filed it as an official document.
So they couldn't do nothing about that.
Wow.
So basically, here's another thing. In a decree, Shackman was gone the day I went it. They kept him for 15 more years on. He didn't belong there. Rutan don't belong there. Those are decrees and settlements. I have a win. And they've got to put that in the Supreme Court as a precedent for all you people, and you should get your tapes because you ask for them, you get them. But what I did is proved in the court with a writ of certiorari, and I don't know how they did it because I wasn't in the Supreme Court. It just went to the Seventh Circuit and went back. But when a judge tells you, I can't give you the tape, he's breaking the law. When a judge tells you, that's in my case, that he's going to treat you as a lawyer, he's breaking the law. We have that as a precedent in my case. That's why for 15 years they kept Shackman out there when he means nothing anymore. He means nothing. So you can take it from there and ask me what you want. They must hear this case or break the law to the Supreme Court.
Well, that's very, the thing is, you were a truck driver, but because you had a personal interest in this, you dug deep. And you don't have you don't have the restraint of trying to please the system. And so, like you said, you're going to go places where a lawyer is not going to go. Just that's the same reason that New Jersey Weedman represented himself, because he knew that a lawyer would not make the argument for jury nullification. And that's something else that judges routinely lie to juries about. They'll say, don't judge the law. You're just here to judge the facts of the case. No, you're there to judge whether you agree with the law as well as the way it's being applied. That was in the New Jersey Constitution. So in your particular case, what they were doing was they were altering the transcripts. You found that they were altering the transcripts. You wanted the audio tapes, and then the judge says, no, I won't give them to you. And that's where you had them, isn't it?
Oh, that's where I had them. I had them with the docket, too, because they were transferring the docket, changing the dockets. And the woman, that Pentosi woman, she wrote on there that Cheryl Young, court reporter coordinator, is trying to change the docket, but that's how hard it is to do. She don't know what she can do. And then listen to this. The doctor's statement that was supposed to be given in 89 wasn't put into the file. When they wrote this, I got it written from them, until 5 years later.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Wow.
We can go in there, and it doesn't matter because fraud upon the court has no statute of limitations. So it doesn't matter why I was just patient and patient and patient, because I knew I had them, and the wrong people were in office, and you can't get through those people. You can't go to the U.S. attorney. You can't go to this one, because no matter how the lower court is, the lower people are, they're going to save their jobs. They're not going to go for you. They can't lose their amount of money and what they can do to feed themselves. And the boys at the top hold them back. But now with Trump in there, you got the biggest chance of your life to do anything. And right now, if we go in there, everybody gets their tapes.
All right, let's. I want to ask Bill a question, because when we talked to Bill at the beginning, and again, Bill is in the hospital with burns. He was assisting you with the case. He got involved in this because they were changing information, hiding information from him as well. And that's the key thing, that this applies to everybody. Everybody needs to know your rights. You need to know how important it is for a jury. You need to know how a jury works. You need to know that there are audio transcripts, and that it's not just in Chicago, and it's not just in your particular case, Eugene, because in your case, you were directly coming after Chicago. You're trying to get monetary compensation because you were wrongfully terminated. Tell us, Bill, what was your case about where they were altering things?
Well, I had two cases. One was a divorce case, and one was a animal control hearing regarding improper taking of my dogs. And when I get into it, when you start to look at the evidence is missing. It's redacted. It's just altered. And I've asked for the audio tapes, and the presiding judge says, well, there are no audio tapes. And with understanding Gene's case, he established that there was audio tapes in my case as well as his and in everybody else's.
All right, that's good. Let's get back to Eugene because we're about to run out of time. So, Eugene, is this something that, I mean, do we know that this is happening, that there's audio tapes in all the court cases across the country, or is it just in the Chicago area that they got audio tapes and and they're refusing to let them go out?
Everybody has tapes because you can look in their budget. Their budget provides for these tapes. The people are mostly scared when they go in there because when they tell them no, there isn't none, they don't fight for it. They march for crazy things, and they don't wait for the rights they've got. They've got the right to hear their case. And the only, Judge Posner says this, and it's in the book, it says the only real facts of the case or audio of the case is the major audio tape. That's the one where you talk into the microphone, and they've got it in a vault in every one of their courts. So basically, you got Judge Posner saying that, and you got Duff saying, I can't give you your tapes because if I give you your tapes, everybody will want their tapes, and they'll be playing them all over TV.
I can't give you your rights because if I give you your rights and due process, everybody's going to write rights and due processes. We can't have the slaves do that. Let's talk a little bit about this. We've only got about a minute and a half. You're trying to go before the Supreme Court, and let's talk about this rule that blocks them from coming to court against you because of the corruption that you exposed. Explain that rule again. Was it Rule 13?
No, it's Rule 11.
Rule 11.
And in there it says if anything is missing from your file, the other side can't put in another motion. So now they're trying to block us from different ways to get in, but we're going to get in. And the point is once we're in, they can't be there. It's me talking to the Supreme Court. They can't say anything. What I say goes then. And everybody gets their tapes then. Because that's the main issue. No judge has the right to tell you there's no tapes. Plus, if you look at my case, it helps all of you because anybody out there, and I know there's a lot of people out there, have been told, I'm going to treat you like a lawyer. You can't do that. In my case, it shows there and tells the precedent that you cannot do that. Actually, Michael Shackman's case was gone when I won that case.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us, Eugene Wzorek. Again, you can find him on Facebook.com/Eugene Wzorek, and that's Wzorek. Look, if he gets this, folks, we've been talking about Brady violations, where the Supreme Court said because of a Brady case, you cannot withhold exculpatory evidence that would prove the defendant innocent. If Eugene gets his chance to go to the Supreme Court, we'll be talking about the Wzorek violations.